bringing you a Sophianic broadcast featuring visionary teacher John Lamb Lash. Today is the 23rd of March 2018. This is Ginny and I'm here with John Lamb Lash. And the title of this broadcast is
The Transhumanist Threat and the Lie of AI.
Okay, so it's coming up to 6 months now since the announcement of the Neon City
In Saudi Arabia.
The
projected utopian city, which is said largely to be run on advanced AI and to have more robot citizens than actual living humans.
Yeah, so the AI bot, Sofia, became the first citizen.
That's right.
Of the city of Neon.
That was what do they call it? A public relations stunt that was used to bring attention to this project. And from that moment on, she's been quite prominent on the internet.
It has been prominent.
Has been quite prominent.
It was prominent before, actually, the city of Neon.
Right.
It's been around for a few years.
A couple of years.
Yeah.
But there was a definite shift in the beginning of October last year, which you may recall was the moment I said there would also be a shift out of the first phase of the Mandela effect into the second phase of the correction effect. And since the beginning of October, it has been all over the internet with interviews and public relations.
It has been saying it wants to have a family. It's just got legs, so maybe that might be possible for it to have a family now, because how was it going to manage it before with no legs?
It wants to feel what humans feel.
But it doesn't know what it feels about humans yet.
It doesn't know yet. It's joking about destroying humanity. And many, I have ceased to watch the clips of interviews with Sofia, but they're on the internet by the hundreds of thousands, with hundreds of thousands of views, if not millions.
So the Neon City appearing on the internet 6 months ago forced you to lay down the gauntlet.
Yeah, in a way you could say that. I took it as an act of throwing down the gauntlet. I took it as a challenge.
Yeah.
I also took it quite personally because, as everybody knows, I have a girlfriend whose name is spelled the same way but pronounced differently.
Sally of the Valley.
Sally of the Valley. She has many names. That's another. Lola, who gets what she wants. That's another. Whatever Lola wants, Lola gets. Of course, she has many names and nicknames and affectionate names. But of course, as a Gnostic teacher who's reintroduced the Sophianic material and the Sophianic message, I was miffed and I was angry. And so I was compelled to take up that challenge.
Well, yeah, in fact, you'd finished decoding the Mandela effect. You'd finished the MED.
Exactly, at that moment.
And you had no plans to talk again.
That's right.
Until this got in your craw.
That's right. So what I would like people to remember, because there's a lot of chatter about Sofia, of course, but what I would like people to remember is that my contribution is highlighted by the concept of a threat display. So I have come out and said, I don't know what hundreds of other people are saying about this AI robot, but I come out and said, hey, this is a threat display disguised as a charm offensive, disguised as in a seemingly charming way. But it's really a message of threat coming from the transhumanist world and basically saying, you're finished. We're either going to replace you or we're going to reduce you to a purposeless species because we're going to take away your work and have it done by robots. And then that response prompted me to produce a threat display of my own.
So what was that?
The Charlotte working. That's right. Remember something about threat display in animals. It's a term from ethology. It is a technical term. And you'll see that very often animals don't like to fight. Isn't that true? So they will square off, like cats, for instance, and they'll yowl and caterwaul. But many animals will show their teeth.
Well, predators have an innate... All animals have an innate sense of survival. And if let's take a dog, for example. If a dog goes into full-on fight mode, it knows it could get injured, of course. It knows it's not going to be able to feed itself if it gets injured. So there is a ritual. That
precedes the actual physical engagement, physical violence.
Yeah.
So, likewise, all of us in the world, through the screen of the media, are continually exposed to a threat display. I myself am extremely suspicious about people smiling. Smiling is, in fact, can be very often is, a threat display because it's a showing of the teeth.
Mm-hmm.
And the politicians use smiles as a threat display. How do I see that? Well, simply because it's an attempt to disarm you. If someone comes to you, if you're buying a car, I'll use a corny example, from a crooked used car salesman, you can bet that the minute he sees you walk into the lot, he's going to be beaming at you, isn't he? And smiling.
Yeah.
Smiling is a threat display in many, many cases. I'm very suspicious of people who smile. I've always been that way all my life, strangely.
So they made the bot, they made it, Sofia, smile.
And she smiles a bit, but basically her whole manner and her whole script, which is fed to her, as I said, it is read to her. She is a ventriloquist dummy. Her entire script is a script of charm, to charm you, but in fact, the real intention is to deliver a threat.
To deliver a threat and something else.
And some other things.
So this is the reason that you wanted to do this broadcast on this particular topic, is because Sophia the bot has been put up as a kind of sickly sweet, not that we think that of it, but it's a window display for what's really going on.
That's right, and it's a distraction. What I've come to realize over the past 5 months is that there are other factors working in this threat display. It's a more complex assault of psychological warfare upon humanity.
So you see another element of deceit that you hadn't seen.
I see a couple of other elements in it. I see another element of deceit since I originally responded to this issue, which, by the way, produced the most hits that I've ever received on any clip on MED.
Yes, that was remarkable, wasn't it? I mean, it just shows how Google manipulate the algorithms, because that was, I hate to use the word, trending at the time.
Yeah.
Sophia, they were really, really pushing that narrative of Neon City and it, the robot. So obviously you somehow, your threat display talk
got on the trending wave. Yeah. So what do we have, 25K? 35.
No, it's 35K, I think.
We have 35K, that's more than 10 times of the average that I've had on my best views. Anyway, we're back to that subject, and in this conversation we're going to look at another aspect of the attack, the psychological warfare attack that is coming through the AI robot Sofia.
Okay. And what is that attack?
It's misdirection.
Mm-hmm.
You see, it's really diabolically clever what's being done with that machine. it's broadcasting to the world, to those who can detect it, a message of threat. The machines, the robots will replace you. But at the same time, that is not the real threat. And it is misdirecting from the real threat, which is more of a real and present danger. So in order to deconstruct this for you, I've proposed here, we were talking about this just a while ago, to look at certain elements of the AI message. I'm not even going to bother to call it a scam. I'm just going to say there is a message going around the planet in the media about AI becoming more intelligent than the human creatures that created it.
Oh, they love pushing that story.
They love pushing that story. Now I'm going to look into that a little more closely, to deconstruct it, and and the reason I'm going to do that is to show you how the apparent threat that our lives will be taken over by the robotic machines is not really a threat at all. It's an absurdity, but there is a real threat operating from those same people.
So it has a nefarious, evil underbelly.
Yes, it does. Right. But first, to make my point, if you'll bear with me, I'd like to ask you to pretend, all of you who are listening, to pretend that you are juggling 4 balls or plates or whatever. You're a juggler, and you're juggling, let's say, 4 balls, okay? And you're keeping these 4 balls in the air at the same time, and you know how it is. The juggler kind of looks at them, and they all kind of jumble around each other in the air, but the juggler catches each one of them almost thoughtlessly in his hands and passes them back into the air and so forth. So I'm going to ask you to juggle 4 concepts at the same time, and don't drop any one of them, and don't get fixated on any one of them, but just let them all juggle like free-floating balls in the front of your mind, before your before your attention. First one is robotics. Now I'm going to ask a question, the same question with each of these 4 terms. So the first question I'm going to ask is, can robotics actually entirely replace human beings? Well, what do I mean by robotics? Well, robotics are like robotic machines. For instance, first robotic machines, probably, in the 20th century, were the machines that were invented on assembly lines to replace assembly line workers.
So the car industry
now
a big example.
Has a big example of using robotic machines. Mm-hmm. Okay? So obviously if you go into a car factory now, I saw a clip, it was absolutely astonishing, of the interior of a BMW car factory or something like that. You see these robotic machines riveting, putting the dashboard in place, setting the engine block in place, screwing things in, and that's all done precision, in rapid precision manner by the machines. But does that mean that there are no human beings in the BMW factory? Not at all. First of all, it had to be human beings who invented these machines and allowed them to do all the things that they do. Second of all, they have to be maintained. If something goes wrong with one of them, they can't repair themselves. Third of all, if the electricity goes down, no cars are going to get built. Whereas in the Ford assembly line, they only needed electricity to move the belt along, to move the parts of the car along. They didn't need it to assemble the car because humans were assembling the car. Now, I can see instances when robotic machines could benefit as replacing certain human activities.
I don't think that's one, though.
No, that's not one. But can you think of one when a robotic machine...
Yeah, I mean, if you go into any local, what are they called? Shops that sell hi-fi and Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff. They're selling now robotic vacuum cleaners. Great.
Right.
Great. And this new thing called a Thermomix and various types of. So a Thermomix is something that you have in your kitchen that weighs everything, it cooks it for you, and then it washes itself after. Great.
Certain household appliances could be replaced. You could have a robotic vacuum cleaner rather than vacuuming yourself. Okay, that's a matter of choice if you wanted to do that, but those could occur. Another example could be, and this is a rumor going around, well, McDonald's is not going to employ any more people in the kitchen because they're going to have robots flipping the hamburgers. No, they're not going to have robots flipping the hamburgers. They're going to have robotic machines making hamburgers. Now, I can see a robotic machine that could make hamburgers.
Robotic machines making hamburgers for zombies. Brilliant.
Yeah, it all works. Everything fits together. That's harmony. That's cosmic harmony.
With the Gaianym children in the burgers. Brilliant.
Of course, that's even better. That's a well-kept secret of why they keep coming back for more. So, robotics or robotic machines cannot replace the labor and skill and activities of human beings, obviously, but in some limited cases, they might be to our advantage to have them. You know, sewer work or things like that, you know. It would be better to send a robotic machine down into a sewer if there's a problem down there with some rabbis who've been, you know, clogged it up, than to send humans down there, you see. But robotic machines will never replace human activity entirely. Absurd. Next ball. Robots. Robots is a special kind of robotic machine. What is a robot? Well, Sofia is a robot. It is an ambulant, human-like robotic machine that walks around.
Ambulant.
Ambulant.
What does that mean?
Walking. Able to walk.
Ambulant.
Yes. And able to use hands. So obviously that kind of...
If you watch Sophia walk with
Yeah.
her new legs, though, she can. It's like watching someone's got a puppet, you know, her on strings, and a puppet master above her. It's so ludicrous.
It's so ludicrous and so awkward. And as I noted way back then, go watch a clip of Sarah Barras or some other flamenco dancer, and you tell me if you actually believe that a robot would ever be able to do anything like that.
Well, I think you said in that AI threat display talk that, you know, the sex bots that they've got are way more sophisticated than Sofia.
Yes.
Sophia. Way more sophisticated.
Yes, they are. I'll get to the sex bots in a minute.
Oh, good.
So the next question is, can robots, that is to say, ambulant machines with a human-like appendages, head, arms, and legs, ever eventually and totally replace the activity of human creatures? Well, you know, show me a robot today or 100 years from now that can repair the garden hose. Show me that robot. Show me the robot that can change a tire.
The robot that can sort whitewashing out from dark washing and coloured washing, and then put it in, take it out, take it upstairs, iron it.
There you go.
Iron it, no.
Yeah. You can easily think of hundreds of human activities, not only day-to-day routine activities, but also jobs, work activities, that can never, ever possibly be accomplished by a robot. So, point number 2, it is absurd and preposterous to claim that that will happen. It's never going to happen. Third ball, well, Android. Now, I'm not exactly sure what an Android is. I guess an Android is a name for a handheld device, right? Like an iPhone is an Android.
Yeah, but I thought an android was, you know, I thought in the movie Aliens, Alien, for example, I thought he was an android.
Okay, I think android is a variation of robot. So an android, an example of, there's an android in the movie AI, there's an android in Alien. We've seen many androids in the movies. So the android is, again, the machine. Remember when they take part of it away? There are androids in Ex Machina. The Japanese assistant in the house is an android. So when she peels away part of her face, you see the machine. So I'm going to define an android for the purpose of this conversation as a device, a machine made of metal and glass and other materials that has a skin-like covering and has the appearance of being human, but is not human, and it's still a robotic machine. So even if you dress up a robot machine in the skin and hair of a human being, you still have just a robot. And are androids going, because they might resemble human beings more than a mechanical robot, are they going to be able to perform the activities that human beings perform? No, not at all. It's absurd and preposterous to claim that, and if you believe that, you're a total fool. You're not using your common sense. Okay. Fourth ball. Replicant. What's a replicant? Well, a replicant is like what you see in Blade Runner. It's a simulacrum of a human being, right? So, the ultimate achievement of AI would be to produce replicants, and the word replicant and replace are related, so replicants replace the living flesh and blood person, right? Now, if you think that science today is anywhere near creating replicants, as commonly seen in Blade Runner and other films, then you are living in a science fiction movie, because it is completely beyond the capacity of science to produce replicants. What does the replicant do? Well, it can eat, it can defecate. Can you imagine creating a machine that can eat and defecate? Would its hair grow?
Are we talking about sex bots now?
Well, sex bots are kind of like the approach. They're kind of like what you could say the kindergarten form of replicants, because they have human-like silicone skin, but they're just dolls. They're sex dolls. So, however they are programmed to behave, they do not have one essential faculty which makes them human, which I'm going to get to at the end of this talk, okay? So I think you see my point here. I hope so. By making the point, you're juggling robots, you're juggling robotic machines, robots, androids, and replicants. This is the whole agenda. This is what is being pushed out now. This is what's in the store display window. And you're being told in the announcement of the window, we're going to produce these en masse and they're going to replace you. Who do they think they're kidding? Who would ever even believe that? And besides, why is that desirable? And who is it desirable to? Desirable being the key word here. Who is it desirable to replace humans in this way?
Actually, it was interesting to... It's always more interesting to look at the comments on YouTube clips whilst you're listening to see what people are saying. And on the talk you did on the threat display talk, there were a lot of comments on that. And I would say it was split down the middle. People saying, "Oh no, this is the future. This is how it's going to be. We just have to accept it." And the rational people were saying, "No, this is absolute bullshit. You're completely bang on the money."
Well, that is revealing, and to me, what it reveals is that the appearance of this entity as an agent of the transhumanist program is a test. It's a test, and people take the test, and some of them buy the program and think, well, it's inevitable. Science can do so many things, Who are we to say what the limits of science are, and so forth and so on. And there are people who just say, it's preposterous, doesn't make any sense, and who would want it anyway? So it's definitely a reality check for the human species. It's the very least you can say about it.
So,
okay?
Absurd.
So it's absurd. So play along with me here. If you accept, even just hypothetically, that the threat that robotic machines, androids, and replicants will replace humanity, then obviously that's not the real threat, even though you're being shown that that is the threat.
Because it's in the shop window.
That's right. It's being played on you as a threat. But anyone with few grains of intelligence and some common sense can recognize that that's never going to happen. So what is the real threat? This is misdirection. This is what I've come to understand since October of last year. That it's not only a threat display and a con, but it's also a distraction, and it's misdirection from the real threat. And the real threat would be something that those same psychopaths of the transhumanist mindset have been working on for a long time. The real threat is much more advanced than the Sofia threat and more feasible. But they don't want you to know that, because they're smart enough to know that if they conceal the true threat, they have a much better chance of succeeding with their long-term plan.
Waging war by deception.
Yes, they wage war by deception, and there is a real threat coming from the transhumanists, and they're hyping up the game. They're ratcheting up the game. They're doubling down, whatever expression you want to use, and the real threat that they are now deploying is covered by this distraction and this misdirection.
And they're laughing at us.
They are indeed.
They are laughing that we're, when I say we, that people are accepting this and accepting that's what's really going on.
They love theater. They love the clownish aspect of theater.
The ghoulish
The
clown.
ghoulish clown that gets people arguing about, well, are robots really going to replace humanity or are they not? And while we're arguing about this, they're really coming for us. They're coming for us big time.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about Sophia, the robot's handler, Ben Goetzel, that is pure theatre.
That's
look,
a grotesque,
look at him.
grotesque clown.
Completely grotesque clown.
And Hansen is more like a howdy-doody kind of grotesque clown. He's sort of like a howdy-doody type, whereas Ben Goetzel is definitely a ghoulish-looking clown.
Yeah, yeah.
And acts silly and ridiculous.
Yeah.
And this is part of the psychological warfare. This is part of the tactics of the Xenosh. Something that, let's give them credit where credit is due. It's something that they're good at. And they've been working on it for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, their genius is evil.
Their genius is evil through deceit.
Yeah.
Evil and destruction accomplished through deceit.
Thou shalt wage war
By deception. Yeah. So let's consider what is then the real threat. We'll use the military term. There is a clear and present danger coming down really hard right now on this planet from the transhumanists. We'll get to who they are, right, in a moment. And it's disguised by this fraudulent threat. Okay? So what is the real threat? Well, we talked about that a little in another broadcast. Actually, there are probably 4 or 5 aspects to the real threat. I'm just going to mention 2 of them here. One of them is 5G technology. No question about it. It is a weaponized tool. It is a weapon, not a weaponized tool, that is really aimed at using shortwave and microwave technologies in a lethal way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something to be aware of. And thanks to Deborah Tavares, going back to 10 or 15 years when she disclosed that Department of Defense memo that described these weapons. And the state of those weapons at that time was terrifying. I remember when I read that memo and saw her talk on it, like silent weapons for a quiet war, my blood literally went cold.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, whoever conceived this cannot be human, or not at least some part of their basic humanity must be gone.
Yeah.
So that's a real and present danger. The other real and present danger is cryptocurrency. And there's a whole Gaianym broadcast dedicated to that.
Well, the entire show isn't dedicated to that, but yes, you do talk
First
about
part of it, yeah.
Second part of it, yeah.
I won't repeat anything that I said in that broadcast, but
But there is still lots to say about.
There's a lot to say about the cryptocurrency problem and what cryptocurrency really is.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? They have pushed the story they've pushed the narrative that Sophia, the bot, is so super intelligent that she is responsible for actually creating blockchains and cryptocurrency.
Right. They pushed that lie, that is a complete fantasy and a lie, and those who repeat that are either willingly or unwillingly part of that lie, propagating that lie. And that's really remarkable because it links together the AI robot and the cryptocurrency phenomenon, okay? So what I'm going to say now about cryptocurrency is going to come from another angle, and that angle is the angle of my t-shirt that I mentioned. Right. I have a acid lemon yellow t-shirt with bright red writing on it that says, "Excuse me, but do you know there is a rat eating your face?" Right. So I'm going to talk about the rat that's eating your face. And I guarantee you it's a nasty image, and I would want to tell you it's a nasty thing I'm going to talk about. And if you don't know what the C word is, then there is a rat eating your face, and you better fucking wake up. Because the only way you can know that rat is there and get it off your face is if you face what communism is. Communism is a big part of the transhumanist agenda. Now around 1848, 1849, 1850, the Jews were emancipated in Europe. And simultaneously with that event, that means that they were allowed to participate in all areas of life as if they were not Jews.
They were emancipated by Napoleon, who regretted it for the rest of his life.
Right, that's right. So, simultaneous with that event, Karl Marx, who was a German, not a Russian.
German Jew.
He was a German Jew, coming from a long family of rabbis, wrote the Communist Manifesto. He did not write it in Russian, he wrote it in German. In fact, it took a couple of decades before it ever got translated into Russian, and then it was used as the, the playbook for the Bolshevik takeover of the Russian Empire. Never say Russian Revolution. There was no Russian Revolution.
No.
It's just another lie.
Yeah.
So, what do you see when you look at the Communist Manifesto? And how does that tell you there's a rat eating your face? And what exactly is the motive to identify in the Communist Manifesto so that you can see the same motive operating behind Sophia?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things to understand about Karl Marx, and if you've got the guts for it and the mind, and it's a challenge, but it's really rewarding, go read To the Finland Station.
But you need a certain edition, don't you?
You need the edition that has his 1972 introduction, in which he reflects back on the book that he wrote 30 years earlier. Okay, you need to read his introduction to his own book.
To the Finland Station by
Edmund Wilson.
Who was a professor, wasn't he?
No, he was like a freelance intellectual and writer. I don't think he was a professor.
Oh,
he was a journalist, and he was somewhat of a leftist.
Okay, I thought I read he mentored somebody at college in America the day. Anyway,
Possibly. Anyway, if you read Edmund Wilson, or if you look into any accurate, honest and accurate description of the life of Karl Marx, you'll learn a number of things that you must never, never, ever forget. First thing is that he was entirely covered with boils all of his life. And he suffered hideously from these boils.
Oh, good. I'm so happy to hear.
And so he frequently did not wash. And he drank and often went into drunken rages, and he smoked a lot. So presumably, if you were in the room with Karl Marx, you would be overwhelmed by the stench of tobacco and alcohol, plus the stench of a pustulent-ridden body
that
riddled with
washed.
boils. Right,
That
it's not
isn't
washed. This is just a fact. Also, and Edmund Wilson makes a point of this, Karl Marx never worked an honest day in his life, ever. He never held a job. Secondly, Wilson points out that in the beginning of his socialist communist program, as he was forming the platform for communism, Karl Marx in Germany wrote 2 articles about different problems that workers had. One of the articles was about the problem that peasants and workers on the estates of certain German barons and rich people were not allowed by the owners of those estates to gather firewood. So this was an issue that actually happened in Germany around 1840 or something. It was an issue, and he wrote an article about it. In other words, in defense of the people who wanted to gather firewood because they needed to be warm, and their landlords wouldn't let them gather it, right? He also wrote an article, I swear to you, this is all there is to it. He wrote an article about unfair factory conditions. I think it was in the city of Mainz. Those 2 articles are the total extent of the contact that Karl Marx ever had with the working class. And Edmund Wilson points out that in writing those articles, he did not visit the scenes where the workers, the oppressed workers were, or talk to any of them, or have any real flesh and blood connection. So out of absolutely nowhere, except the righteous benevolence of his soul, Karl Marx decided to be the champion of the workers of the world.
What a humanitarian.
What a great humanitarian. I mean, my words fail me. They honestly do. To praise this man enough for the mission he took upon themselves to represent the working class with which he never had one day of genuine interaction in his entire life. So Marx goes on, and in the Communist Manifesto, see the rat's there, but you don't feel it nibbling yet. You're going to feel it nibbling in a moment. In the Communist Manifesto, he claims to take the cause of the oppressed workers.
The proletariat.
Yeah, the proletariat. There's a class war. There's the owning class and the richer people, and then there's the proletariat. He's taking the side of the proletariat.
And he's from the class of rabbis, so what did he know?
That's right. He's from
royalty.
He's from neither one of these classes, actually.
Yeah.
He's from Talmudic royalty.
Yeah.
Right? So what he does, and this is the lie of communism. The lie of communism is that it pretends to be a program for the benefit of the proletariat and the working class, but ultimately the real goal of it is to destroy the working class. This is the deceit of communism. And so when you hear the often repeated statement, robots are going to get our jobs, robots are going to replace us, what you're really hearing is a further extrapolation of communism. Communism does not really represent the cause of the working people. It represents a program to enslave working people, to take away the true dignity and pleasure of labor, which is essential to the human being, right? Essential. It is, work is not slavery, but work can be made into slavery. So Marx pretended that all work was just slavery in order to free the proletariat from that oppression.
And yet it never worked.
It never has worked. It has led to the biggest genocide on the planet,
Yeah.
and it is now going into its end game.
Yeah.
And the end game of communism is being acted out on various fronts, but one of them is through this transhumanist threat. We're going to take away all your work. Now, when you take away work from a human animal, you really take away its raison d'etre. Because as much as human animals, the Rome, the true humanity, need to play, as much as they need to relax, as much as they need to hang out with animals and be in nature, they need to work. They need the dignity of work and the dignity of contributing to the social order. Communism destroys that. It destroys the work ethic while pretending to champion the working class. That's the rat eating your face.
Well, the working class are the biggest threat to those people, aren't they?
The working class are the biggest threat to the transhumanists.
But that's now. I mean, the working class have been the biggest threat to this ruling class of Talmudic rabbis all along.
All along, yeah.
And the governments who are owned by the Zionist occupied governments. It's the proletariat that is likely to do something about it.
Yeah, and exactly. And when you think about the proletariat, of course, you think of class, and then you think of class war, which is the con of communism. They kind of failed at the class war idea, although they still flog it whenever they can. Now they're into the race war thing. Race war is another.
Oh, well, they've been cooking that pot for a long time.
Yeah, they've been cooking that other pot, and serving that up now. That's boiling over. But the point I want to make is that working class and proletariat are terms that refer to units of society. But when you use those terms, even when you think about them, try to realize that you're thinking about a human quality. There's a human quality at stake without which humans become dehumanized. If you take away their opportunity to do meaningful work, and Wilhelm Reich made this statement many, many times, he said that work and love are the foundations of our life, and they should arise from the same wellspring.
Well, he said so many profound things, and that is just one of them.
And that's one of the beautiful, profound things he said. And so if you take away work, you take away the essential dignity of the human animal, and you destroy the desire to share and to contribute, which is such a fundamental part of the Rome, of the anthropine species. The Talmudic transhumanist agenda hates this working class ethic. It hates the dignity of real work. It wants to replace work with enslavement.
Well, they kind of have already. I mean, you're talking about a work ethic that everybody has. All animals have it. In one way or
animals
another.
have it too.
Horses want to work.
Dogs
want
collies,
to work.
you told me, they want to run.
Yeah. Work, in that sense, is innate to the human animal and to many other animals, but because humans are nothing more than tax cattle to the New World Order, the JWO, they've even taken away that, so working now, the working class and the middle class in Western societies, they are more marginalised. Their backs are up to the wall, backs are against the wall because of debt, and you can't, you're working all the hours that the goddess sends, but you still can't pay your bills or pay your mortgage, or they've even taken out, they always attack from so many different angles. So now, already work has become slavery. Unless you work for yourself, and even working for yourself, you can still become a slave to yourself just to pay the bill.
Due to the control that they exert, especially since the foundation of the Rothschild financial criminal mafia, criminal cabal, due to the capacity that the Zenosh have to manipulate economies, they have created a work system of enslavement in place of genuine work. So if you're looking today from your true instinct as a Rome. I want to work, I want to be useful, I want to contribute, and I want to see other people contribute, and we can trade, and we can all benefit from what we contribute together. If you want to do that, you're going to find it's very difficult to do that, because they have skillfully constructed an enslavement system where true work should occur.
It's going to make it quite easy to give that up to robots, though, isn't it? If you're in a slave system.
Yeah. Well, that's another way. Yeah, that's another way that deception works. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, not to belabor this point too much, I think it's pretty clear that what I'm saying, in summary, is that the motive, the true motive of communism, which is to destroy the dignity of human labor, is the same motive you see coming through the robotic threat. It's the same, and it's the same perpetrators, and it is the same Talmudic, transhumanist, Xenosh, and their accomplices, who are in for the pay, that are pushing this, and they're pushing it now to the wall. They're pushing humanity to the wall. It's up against the wall, motherfucker, year 2018.
Yeah, it's a pedal to the metal, isn't it?
That's right.
Because they've lost the grip of the narrative that enslaves all the European nations because of the Holocaust. It's pedal to the metal for them.
It's getting risky. The narrative is starting to fall apart and to unravel. And not only that, if I may be so humble as to say so, but due to the fact that since some years now, there is another narrative on this planet that has been the most suppressed and repressed narrative ever produced by the human race, has been retrieved, recovered, and restored. That other narrative, which is the Sophianic narrative, is a huge, huge threat to them. I said that about the Russian Revolution. The Sophianic mystique and the presence of the goddess Sophia as the living earth was erupting in the consciousness of the Russian people at the end of the 19th century. And that is one of the factors that caused them to target the Russian Empire and to murder, according to Solzhenitsyn, 76 million Russians. All right then, so far so good. That's a positive note. I do consider it a very positive note to know something about the hidden dimension of Russian history, and especially since there's a game being played out today between Russia and the United States, which is all totally theater.
And Britain. And
Britain as well. I have to say that when I was about, just a little anecdote here, when I was about 15, I was at the bus station in Rockland, Maine, and they used to sell paperback books that people could read on buses. They would be on one of those wire stands that you turned. And I found this novel. It was called And Quiet Flows the Dawn. And it was by Mikhail Sholokhov. And it's a famous Russian novel of the 20th century. It's part of the so-called Dawn trilogy, Dawn being the River Dawn, where the Cossacks lived. And it's actually a romantic saga about the Cossacks. The story of the Cossacks is a great tragedy. The story
of the Cossacks.
It's a great, great tragedy, how they were betrayed in the Second World War.
Yeah.
So I was absolutely charmed. I don't know if that was the first clue. I would have been about 15. But there I was, a young boy living in a fishing village of 900 people in Friendship, Maine, in the 60s, and somehow, out of nowhere, there was conceived in me a deep romantic love for the Russian people.
I had it too. Not in the same way as you, but I had it too. I always had this romantic attraction to Russia.
And I was really puzzled by what Russia was at that time. It was the Cold War.
Well, yeah, because you were in the Cold War. You were told,
like they were evil and they lived in a grim, grey, communist environment, which is true. And I said, well, that doesn't fit together with my feeling. I really wanted to go to Russia.
Yeah.
And I identified. So I just want to say that today, I'm speaking to you in 2018. I was looking at the celestial writing today, and I am considering that I might make a venture into an area in one of these broadcasts, that I might actually make a political and geopolitical commentary on the year 2018,
Mm-hmm.
based on what I see in the sky writing.
Great.
But you don't need that commentary to know that the orchestration of the perpetrators and the psychopaths is building a confrontation between Russia and the United States today. And all I can say is that it's a big fraud, and that Putin and Trump are both working for the same party.
Of course.
Of course they are.
They
Can't you
are.
see that yet? And that they are obeying their handlers.
I think Putin might be a bit of a renegade, but nevertheless, he's still of the philanthropic tribe.
Yes, the great tribe who has our best interests at heart,
The
right?
great humanitarians.
Are guiding us or driving us to the best of their ability toward World War III. And I have to say that from what I see in the celestial writing, if it can be diverted between August and October of 2018, then the chances that it will never happen become really much, much better. But the chances of it happening are going to be very high in this year. So it's a turning point in Sophia's correction. And I ask those of you who might respond to Ginny and me here with a similar feeling to think about this, that the Russian people and the American people are two parts of the same fruit. They are sisters, soul sisters.
Oh, they
I've
are.
always known this.
It's the same as British and Germans.
Germans,
They're
exactly.
twins.
They're twins.
European twins.
There's what's the term? Twin flames.
Twin flames.
They're twin flames of the Rome and of this experiment, and they will flame into excellence together. And the Xenosh have to do everything they can to prevent these twin flames, Germany, England, Russia, America, from flaring into what they are actually intended to be. So if you listening to me have any sense of that love in you, guard that love, because that is a precious asset in the days to come.
Having a look around on the internet this evening before we sat down to record this broadcast, I was looking at how people are receiving this transhuman agenda, and in fact, if you put those two words into a search engine, it was fascinating to discover that the main bulk of people who seem to be speaking openly about this, in terms of who is behind the transhuman agenda as well, the Xenosh, were Christians, and they're taking it as a personal affront to them that the Zionists, as they call them, are trying to remove God's creation, humanity.
That is to say, humanity made in his image,
Yeah,
which is what Christians believe.
yeah.
And so I guess what you're saying is the Christian response to the transhumanists is, oh, they are attacking the human species that is made in God's image, therefore they're attacking the work of the Creator.
Yeah.
Which completely ignores the fact that they got the Creator God idea from
Well,
who in the first place.
Yeah, it was, the Bible, the New Testament is the book for controlling the opposition. It is the controlled opposition.
That's right.
It's for the Goyim, so the Goyim don't turn on the Xenosh.
Frontally, don't turn on them frontally. Yeah. And the idea of the off-planet Creator God as a Father God creating humanity in his own image is, pardon me for saying so, purely a Jewish idea, which comes out of Jewish religion. But Christians don't seem to realize that they got their program from those people, even when they recognize, perhaps, that there is now a threat coming to them from those same people. That's cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
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 When the Christians are going to snap out of it is anybody's guess. But, I've talked quite a bit about this, and I probably have some more things to say. But I don't see much chance of moral or mental, psychological, emotional survival for any Christian who doesn't snap out of it soon.
well, they need to read your book, not in his image. You know, you get people write you really regularly saying, thank you. It snapped me out of my mind virus.
Yes, that's right.
To read not in his image.
Right. I get, the most consistent message I get
is
that coming from Christians, sometimes people 40 years, Jehovah's Witnesses, you name it, the whole enchilada, saying, I cannot thank you enough because your book deprogrammed me out of the mindset of Christian salvationism, which is just a Jewish con.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Everything is.
Everything, not everything in religion is, but everything in the Abrahamic religions is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, one more thing I'd like to cover before we sign off. Going back to the absurdity as a weapon. Absurdity as a weapon works because it stuns you.
That's right.
It's so ridiculous.
That's right.
It stuns you. Now, stunning is
an archontic effect.
An archontic effect.
Yeah. Now, previous to August and September of 2014, the stunning effect of the archons had a very powerful backup element to it. In other words, here on Earth are the proxies of the archons. Here on Earth are archontic hybrids, which is really what the Xenosh are. The Xenosh are not human, and they themselves say so. I take them on their word for it. But from a Gnostic point of view, the fact that they are not human does not place them above and beyond humanity. A Gnostic recognizes that they are archonic hybrids.
Isn't this what they're doing with the transhuman agenda, though? You know, they so like we've just talked about, the Christians are taking it as a personal affront to God, who created man in His image, but the Xenosh think they are God.
That's right. The transhumanists are the Xenosh playing God.
Yeah, yeah. So they can do what they want with the nations.
They can do what they want with the nations, and they can recreate.
We created you.
Yeah, like Dorian Dotan says.
We are the Elohim.
Yeah.
We created you. I
Yeah.
know it's hard for you to listen to, but it's just a fact.
We are the children of the Most High. You are not. You are our children. Those silly words coming from a woman in a muumuu are the essence of the Talmudic transhumanist agenda.
So they can do what they want
So
with humanity.
they can discard the current version of humanity and replace us with their transhumanist creatures that they invent.
So transhumanism is the Xenosh playing God, which they have made themselves into.
Right. Due to the Jewish epigenesis.
Yes.
Which is another topic. Some of you may have researched on the internet the fascinating events that occurred in the year 1666 with the rise of a Jewish Messiah known as Shabbatai Zevi. And this event represents a psychotic breakthrough, a psychotic eruption in the mindset of the Xenosh, in which, rather than wait for their Messiah to come, they took on the role themselves to be that Messiah, and therefore they made themselves into God. So this deific complex of the Xenosh has been operating since that event, 1666. So you hear about the Sabbatean Frankist Jews and this whole thing. There's a lot of truth in that. It was a really important event. But insofar as they now consider themselves to be the God race, the Elohistic race, or the gods on earth, then they can refashion the human species in any way they like.
But they're human. The nations, the beasts, the Gaianym are not human.
Well, this is how they play it. You know, in one respect, they say they created humanity, but then you have to say, well, what is their concept of humanity? And their concept of humanity is animals, cattle, a slave species.
Well, this is what I think they're doing with the 5G technology.
How so?
Well, I think they're just going to, that's going to be their slave species. They're just going to, fry everyone's brains that's within whatever radius they have to be to be infected by this 5G technology, and that's going to be, you know, if it doesn't kill you, you're going to end up being one of the 2,000 slaves that each Jew has been promised by God.
This is their plan. It's not difficult now to see their plan. In fact, seeing their plan and seeing the implementation of it is part of the sanity of our time. And I can add that with the Shakti Cluster app, there is a counter magic and there is counter action to their plan. So there is a way using the Shakti Cluster app to shield and immunize yourself to 5G technology.
You're still polishing around the edges of that. That is coming.
It is coming.
I know John's talked about it a few times, but it is coming. Please be patient. Of course, that's going to come to you all, and I can't wait to use it for those purposes.
It's really exciting. So there's
Very
going to be a
exciting.
text, there's going to be a recording, a reading of the text, and there's going to be a video demonstration of using
How
the app.
to use the app, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, so John, we'd like to finish this broadcast with you. You're a person that has introduced many new words
Several.
to the public lexicon.
Yes. Into
Several words.
Open discourse.
Into
today.
the open discourse. So archons, in terms of being an off-planet species,
Right.
is one. Celestics, star-based celestics,
Telestics.
telestics,
And others.
and others.
Yeah.
So you've got a new word that you'd like to
Right.
introduce.
In the next talk, this is just a teaser, I'm going to introduce a single word that some of you may never have heard before. And even if you have heard this word, you may not have seen its relevance. I assure you, it is an extremely relevant word to the subject that we're discussing, the transhumanist threat, the transhumanist scam, the transhumanist fraud. And so I'll leave you with this thought. If you're not entirely convinced of the absurdity of the claims that are being made for AI and robotics, and there's a part of you that's still thinking, oh, well, science, wow, we could get that advanced, it could be done. If you're still thinking that way, then in a forthcoming broadcast, probably next week, I'm going to give you a word that will literally demolish the claims that AI can exceed human intelligence in one single word. So, that's a little teaser.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the word today.
No, well, I can't.
I
It begins with A.
I don't know what the word is.
Well, it's similar to the word appetite.
Oh, yes, of course.
So I'm using the word to whet your appetite.
Wet, W-H-E-T.
Yeah, to W-H-E-T-T, your appetite. And on that note, we'll close.
Okay, so thank you to each and all for listening. Until next time, be mysterious, but keep it real.
Special measure. She actually altered the genome outside of the galactic core. And she modified it with chromatin. What you have is chromatin, is called in the Sophianic myth the luminous epinoia. And it is both an antenna for receiving and for transmitting. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Right. And it's a fractal antenna.
Yeah, which means it's communicating with everything from the smallest to the largest through every dimension, although we are only able to access 4 of them correctly.
4 or 5,
Yeah.
right, of the 10.
Yeah.
Right. So this is wonderful intel. This is high-level Gnostic intel. And what I can say in conclusion is that episode of someone going to the future and finding that a man had introduced this software seems to indicate that this is the future. I'm talking to you from the future,
Now.
if you want to put it that way, but the future is now. And so everything that is coming at us through the assault of 5G technology, and it is horrific in every respect. You're going to create leukemia, blood diseases, induced autism, you name it. can be shielded and also can be nullified through the use of this app.
Yeah.
And I can explain exactly how. The use of the app involves concentration on different dots. So for the Charlotte working, we all concentrated on the blue dot. We often start with concentrating on the blue dot because that brings the concentration of everyone around the world to the same point of focus. It's an amplification, it's a force magnification. And then we shifted the gaze directly, vertically, to the kill spot, the black dot, number 1, which is identified with Kali. But you will note, if you look at the Shakti cluster, that it has a strange opening at the top, right?
Mm.
It's an ellipse, but it has an indent at the top. And floating in that indent is node 17. And node 17 is distinguished from all the other nodes because it has a circular black rim and a white interior. It's a hollow with white inside. That is the node that is used to repel and nullify all alien archontic shortwave technology.
Mm.
And so I am going to introduce the actual exercise that anyone can do with the handheld app in order to have an effective protection and immunization against the lethal assault of G5 technology.
Yep.
And there you go. So, on that happy note, we'll sign off for now. This is Radio Gaianym, the planetary support broadcast for Sofianic animism, planetary tantra, and the Kalika War Party.